No big surprises on this opening night of the college football 12-team playoff. Most of us saw this one coming. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Final score from South Bend, Indiana. Notre Dame has officially been the number one first ever team to win an on-campus game in the college football playoff. So Notre Dame has won its first ever college football playoff game. Of course, losing in a BCS championship game to Alabama going back 12 years and 0-2 in the college football playoff in 2018 and in 2020. But here we are, Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman with the win over Indiana. Pretty boring, ho-hum game, pretty workmanlike effort for Notre Dame, just physically more imposing, just so much better than Indiana. Couple quick notes before I start to take your phone calls to get your thoughts on it. And again, I believe the final score was Notre Dame 27, Indiana 11. I missed like the last 90 seconds of the game. Indiana went in and scored a touchdown, put on the 2-point conversion to finally get on the board. So couple notes here. Obviously, Indiana made the first, what could have been a game-changing, game-forming kind of play early in the game when they got the deflected pass from James Carpenter, who played a whale of a game, although he did make a really egregious penalty on a late hit on Riley Leonard that extended a drive and gave Notre Dame eventually, I believe, was that their touchdown to make it 20-3? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the field goal. But anyway, pass deflected, intercepted. Indiana got what it needed, or what we thought they needed, but they needed a whole bunch more than that because they were nowhere close to being anything up to Notre Dame's standard on this night. But they got that key turnover right out of the gate. But Curtis Rourke was not himself tonight at all. And much of that obviously was the Notre Dame defense. No question. No question. The coverage downfield was exceptional. We talked about it all week leading into the game. The Indiana wide receiver core, good, really good, not exceptional, not elite, not top-end speed, not top-end pros. Good wide receiver core, not great. They were blanketed all night. Curtis Rourke, under pressure most of the night, even when he had time to throw, did not look himself, was not putting the football on the money as he typically did coming into this game. This was the number one rated efficiency passer in America coming into this game, Curtis Rourke. Indiana's punter is horrible. I did not scout this guy, did not look at the Indiana punting angle leading into this game, but he's terrible. Unless maybe just had the worst night of his career. But if he punted like this before, got to be able to find a punter because he was costing them anywhere from 15 to 25 yards per punt, per possession. Had some awful punts, including a 20-yarder in the first half. And, of course, it really tells us something when a back can go 98 yards. And I know that Notre Dame may have the best tandem of running backs in the nation, and we could possibly go 3 deep on that analysis. But certainly Jeremiah Love is exceptional, and Jadarian Price, both of those guys, 1A and 1B. I went into this college football season, and for the most part throughout this season, thinking that Ohio State's 2 running backs were the best tandem in the nation. These 2 guys, they're the best tandem in college football. And they didn't even show off really in this game, but they did on a few occasions. That Jeremiah Love run early in the fourth quarter where he was trapped in the backfield and basically just got through like 7 Indiana defenders and made his way to the sideline for a 7-yard gain. Exceptional stuff. But the 98-yard burst, an athletic defense needs to find a pursuit angle to limit that to a 25 or 30-yard run. Indiana, not good enough to be in the playoff. And I would not say this about other teams that suffer playoff blowouts. I am not one of those people that believe, okay, because you lost by 3 or 4 touchdowns in a playoff game, you did not belong. I am not all about that. I believe that you can't live in hindsight and say, now that we saw you get blown out, you didn't belong. No, I will say it this way. Indiana did what it could do. It did its part against a weak Big Ten schedule and against no non-conference opponents. They played 2 tough opponents, 1 elite opponent. They were blown out by 23 points. They were pretty much manhandled in a similar fashion in Columbus against Ohio State as they were tonight against Notre Dame. And then they got outplayed 3/4 of the game against Michigan, but they took an early lead and won 20-15 against the 7-5 Michigan team that's about the 30th best team in the country. And they played nobody else. They did what they had to do. Did they earn a playoff berth? Yes, based on their schedule, they did. But they did not belong in the playoff. And so what I'm saying there is it was not the case of a team that performed against a reasonable schedule, that performed against quality opponents, and that just had a bad night in the playoff. No, this team showed us what they were all season. They're a decent football team. They're a fringe top 25 team. And they were clearly not ready for this. And this game pretty much turned the way I thought it would. Maybe Indiana did not show quite the offense that I thought. Patreon members, you would have to tell me what my final score was. I think it was 27-13, 27-11. Now I thought it was going to be 27-13, a little bit more competitive. Final note before I take my first call here would be 12 minutes left in the ball game. Make that 10:45 left in the game. Indiana's down 20-3. And they actually have decent field position. They got a couple first downs. They were out near midfield. It wasn't like they were at their own 3-yard line. They're at midfield, 10:45 left in the game. It's 20-3, and it's 4th and 12. I get it, and I get that the percentage chance of you making 4th and 12 is probably 10 or 15%. Was Curt Cignetti basically waving the white flag? Yes, he was, and saying, I want this score to look as good as it possibly can. Curt Cignetti, you coached a remarkable season. Remarkable. You are my coach of the year as well, officially on my Football Writers Association of America ballot. Yes, my coach of the year as well. However, that was a loser's mentality move. Okay. Let's go to the call-in line here. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got our guy, Michigan Man, on the line.
How you doing, Mark? Yeah, that might be the worst punter in the country.
He's horrible.
Because if you remember, he also cost them 14 points against Ohio State.
14?
Yeah, because a lot of that was Caleb Downs. Don't get me wrong, but that punt wasn't good either in that game. When he did it, and they also got. I guess it's more special teams, you could say, but the punt block they gave him, the 1st and goal. So that their punting unit is just awful.
Yeah, I hate to pick on one guy, but yeah, awful punts in this game, and then he just drops a punt snap, against Ohio State, just hands him a touchdown. Yes, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and one thing Curt Cignetti got to stop doing, man, and I don't know if I can think of another coach that does this. He talks way too much ish leading up to games. Like I'm sure you saw what he was saying today, right?
Oh, during the day before the game?
Yeah, he went on game day.
No, did not. I don't watch game day.
He said
on game day,
and I can't stand this. He said, "Not only do I beat top 25 teams, I obliterate them." Literally, what he said.
What's he talking about? Well, like what?
I don't know.
What's he referring to?
He brought up Nebraska was his example, which isn't even really a top 25 team.
No, they're 6-6.
So I don't.
And I'm sure nobody on the game day set challenged him.
Nick Saban actually did.
Okay.
Nick Saban
but
yeah, exactly, yeah. But what he said, Nick Saban said, you wasn't talking this much SHIT when you was on my staff. That's what he said. Pretty much saying, this is not how I ran it when I was a coach. Without saying that, I thought, honestly. Now I thought this was a more dominant performance against them than Ohio State, even Ohio State's was, because this was dominant from from the jump, especially on the lines of scrimmage. The lines of scrimmage were not even close, man. Not even close. The push, the pass protection, the defense. They didn't even have to drop, and they were talking about during the game. They didn't even have to blitz to get any sort of pressure to stop the run. No, they didn't have to blitz at all, really. You know what I'm saying?
I would totally agree with everything about the lines of scrimmage that Notre Dame was more dominant. I would say that Curtis Rourke was throwing the ball better against Ohio State. So when he didn't complete passes against Ohio State, it was because of simply coverage and pass rush. No way could he. But when he had the time to throw, when he had receivers that were reasonably open, he was hitting them. He wasn't doing that tonight. So I thought we had a better Curtis Rourke version against Ohio State. But yeah, at the line of scrimmage, Notre Dame was better than Ohio State.
Yeah, in that Ohio State game, I remember the adjustment Jim Knowles made. He just started bringing the house every time.
Yes.
He was bringing 6, 7. Sometimes he was just bringing everybody. Notre Dame really didn't have to do that. They were talking about during the game. It's like they were showing the numbers where you'd be like, yeah, we should run it here because there's no one in the box really, and that defensive line just ate up their offensive line. And you're right, they really don't belong in the playoffs. I mean, they were very fortunate because of their schedule, but when you look at the actual talent, I would say teams that were clearly more talented than them, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they really couldn't do anything offensively against Michigan, Ohio State, or Notre Dame. And the other thing about that is their offense is a little gimmicky to me. It's literally spam back shoulder fades. And then if there's like a RPO we can go to, it's the same RPO every time, or it's stretch. They don't really go to anything else.
Absolutely. You're right. Very true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm excited for them all. But yeah, I think that let's see if you agree with this. Do you think they should definitely consider strength of schedule probably a little bit more going forward when they're evaluating? I know it's probably tough, but I mean, this is a classic example of they just got a very favorable schedule.
My correction would be different than that, but my correction is not going to happen. My correction would be to fix the scheduling, to take the scheduling out of the hands of the individual schools and give it to a committee that would base it on equitable, strategy and approach based on the previous season. Everybody would have to play Power 5 teams, all of that. But that's not going to happen.
Oh, for sure. And I just wanted to comment because I didn't get a chance to. Morgan Freeman is doing a heck of a job in Notre Dame. Heck for a 38-year-old coach with he had no head coaching experience before this, correct?
Oh, Marcus
Am I
Freeman.
right?
Yes. Yeah. Thought you were going to the acting.
Did I say Morgan Freeman? I might have said that. Oops, my bad. But Marcus Freeman, man, is
he's
one hell of a coach, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if you actually look at his resume so far, he has 11 ranked wins, which I think is they said the most.
Yeah.
As in Notre Dame, 12 now. Yeah. He's got a better, just a little jab. He got a better record in the playoffs than Ryan Day. Technically, he's 1-0. Ryan Day's 1-3, 1-2.
Yeah.
So technically,
let's line up some of those Clemson and Alabama and Georgia teams against Marcus Freeman's team, and not Indiana.
Well, very true, very true. But I had to put that little jab, that little troll in there, man. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I got to say. I will say Indiana's tackling was absolutely atrocious. I don't know what they were doing during those 2 weeks, but they couldn't tackle anybody. I mean, it looked like they were just falling off players. I don't know if that's just a difference of physicality. I don't know what that was, but that was a pathetic showcase of tackling by Indiana. I'll leave it at that, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Thank you to Real MVP correcting me on the final score. So there was about once we got past Indiana punting at 10 minutes left in the game, I thought, you know what? Why wait? Game's over. They're not coming back. And I thought about getting this show ramped up early. And then I had a few text messages come in and so forth, back and forth, back and forth. And obviously in this kind of game, the clock rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls when the winning team has the football. So then it hit about 4 minutes, and I, in earnest, got going on setting everything up, and it's 27-3, and I had the game still on, and then 27-11. And how in the world did Indiana score another touchdown in the final minute of play? Because think about this. I'm going to go to the box score, and I'm sure one of you will fill me in. Had they gotten the 2-point conversion, they would have cut the game to 27-19 and technically would have had a chance to win the game, correct? Unless they, in fact, scored on the very last play of the game. They would have kicked an onside kick down by just one score, which is kind of interesting. Not that they legitimately had a chance to win, but I'm going to go back and look at that just because Curt Cignetti, when you punted with 10:45 left in the game, you actually ended up with this final score. You ended up accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish, and that's not to win the game. You accomplished making the record book look respectable. When people 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, look back at the first college football playoff of 12 teams, they will see Notre Dame 27, Indiana 17. Oh, nice little effort by Indiana. That was a good game. That was a decent game that they played. And they've never made it back to the college football playoff since, but that was a good effort by Indiana on that night. And if there are any Indiana fans watching, they probably hate me right now by declaring that they'll never get back to the college football playoff. I don't know that. I would somewhat bet against it, but I don't know that, of course. All right. Here we go. Let's line up the real MVP. What's going on, DeReal?
Oh, Mark, I just saw a complete snooze fest of a football game. I'm celebrating, doing all sorts of victory. I told you so laps around here. Notre Dame, Mark, you can never underestimate the power of Notre Dame doing Notre Dame things. Onside kick, everybody in the world knows it. What does Notre Dame do? Of course, touch the football and give Indiana the most obvious clear cover up in the world, and they got it and just marched right down the field and scored a touchdown with about 25 seconds left. They didn't get the 2-point conversion, and that effectively ended the game, hence how you get to 17 from 11. So that's the extra point. You know, Notre Dame's got to throw that additional tax of doing something incredibly silly, which is what they've done over the last 30 years. But Indiana
didn't cost them.
I know, but Indiana, clearly, Mark, not a top 25 team, in my opinion, not one of the 25 best football teams. I'm not trolling when I say this. Put them up against Florida next week. I don't know who wins that football game. Put them up against USC the following week. I don't know who wins against that football game. Talent matters, Mark. And this football game is a perfect example of it. And this is why I've been saying for years now, the 12-team playoff will fail. Because we're going to have every single year games like this, in which we're going to have some team that everybody thinks has a good record, but everybody kind of knows deep down inside isn't really that good, and they're going to get completely blasted off the face of the earth.
I don't disagree with you, but we don't anticipate those teams coming from the SEC or the Big Ten. This is a bit of an aberration, this situation here with Indiana. And it could be corrected by actually scheduling, by the actual conference understanding the balance of power within their conference. So this would be my first declaration to make to the Big Ten office in Chicago. Understand the balance of power in your conference. Like, let me schedule your conference, or any soul that loves college football that has half a brain and understands the power structure within the conference. That would be the first measure that needs to be taken to avoid this. Then the second one would be to force these schools to schedule out of conference. Who in the Power Five would not have defeated FIU, Charlotte, and Western Illinois? Who is that team that wouldn't have won those 3 games?
Purdue and Florida State.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Just, to keep things fair and balanced on this show, because we like fairness and
possibly.
Yeah, possibly. But no, I get your point.
Those would be the 2 candidates. You're right. They would be.
But, Mark, this is, to me, a systemic issue with the college football playoff, because, first off, we got a G5 team in there. who's probably worse than Indiana. I'm not sure I know nobody cares about bowl games. If anybody watched the Cal UNLV game, let me tell you, Boise State is going to have the herd run on them, Mark. Cal ran for like 200 yards against UNLV, and they have the number 1 rush defense in the Mountain West. So I just expect running lanes to be wide open in that playoff matchup.
Cal did not have their starting quarterback. They did not have their backup quarterback. They started a quarterback who started 5 games at Ohio University like 3 years ago. That's who started.
And he was dominating them until he got hurt around halftime. It was 14-13.
Oh, I just started watching that game actually this afternoon. I wasn't able to watch it live, and I started, and I didn't get that far into the game. So they were actually playing with a 4th-string quarterback.
Yeah, a guy who made like 1 start as a true freshman or something like that. I mean, just some nobody. And they couldn't do anything with him. And I think Cal would have won that football game, honestly. But it's going to be bad for Boise State. And the same thing with tomorrow. All these people, these SEC haters, Mark, that believe Clemson is going to beat Texas, just stop it, man. We're going to see this exact same thing in the Texas-Clemson game. Texas scores, 17 points? The game's over? Clemson doesn't have an offense. And we're going to see basically this exact same thing.
You don't think Clemson's talent level is higher than Indiana's?
I think it is. But I think Texas is above Notre Dame.
Maybe.
And I don't think Clemson's coaching abilities and lack of transfer portal and all that stuff, it all kind of balanced itself out. Clemson has shown they're not an elite football team this year. They're probably, one of the 20th best teams in football this year? Yes. And Texas is one of the 3 or 4 best teams in football this year?
We think so.
Right. So, Mark, there's a lot of people who are in 2 different camps. You've got Camp A, which is the camp I'm firmly in, which is burn the whole thing down. And you got Camp B, which is this is the first game. If you had to be in one of those camps, which camp would you be?
Oh, I jump to a lot of conclusions just like you do. And when I say jump to conclusions, no, it's founded on logic. It's founded on reasonable data. It's founded on what we've seen throughout the past. So it's not a jumping to conclusion from that standpoint, but we don't have the tangible, I don't want to say evidence. We don't have the tangible proof. We have the tangible evidence. We don't have the tangible proof. No, I want to see this play out. I want to see some more of these games. I don't want to fix it the way people want to fix it. The way people want to fix it is they want to just basically say that we're going to have a committee evaluate the SEC and some portions of the Big Ten to be better than everybody else. And those are the teams that are going to play in these games. What, do you just leave Clemson out of the playoff? They won the ACC championship.
Yes, I would. Yes. Who cares? Who cares they won the ACC championship? I couldn't care.
Then we need to completely reconstruct the sport. We can't.
Yes, you're right. These conferences are not created equally. Nobody cares that Kansas State 2 years ago won the Big 12 championship game. Nobody cares about that. Nobody probably even remembers that because TCU went on to beat Michigan that year.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but if your ACC champion would be what the 7th or 8th best team in another league, I don't care if they're win by 100 points in that conference. It's not a good conference. That's the issue.
So what is your remedy to this? Your remedy has to either be keep things the way they are structurally, just select different teams, or blow the whole thing up and go to some kind of NFL model where we put teams into conferences based on balancing out the conferences.
Oh, my for the playoffs, I believe in the +1 format. That's my simple solution for that. That way you get some quasi-representation for everybody. There's only really 6 teams that can actually win the national championship based on the outcomes of the games. So that's what I would do. But these conference championship games, I mean, Greg Sankey's already alluded to it, Mark, how meaningless they are, that they might add play-in games to the conference championship games, and the winner of those play-in games would automatically get into the playoffs. I'm not sure if you've seen that. So even the top people in the sport are saying or suggesting these conference championship games don't matter.
So explain the play-in game.
So you would have Number 6 play number 3, and number 5 play number 4. And the winner of those 2 games get into the college football playoff automatically, along with the number 1 and number 2 team in the conference.
The number 1 and 2 teams in what conferences?
The SEC and Big Ten.
Yes.
And everybody else is irrelevant because they're not good enough.
Is that what Greg Sankey said?
That's what I'm saying. But that's the presumption it'd be 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC, and then the rest is feeded out as scraps.
Okay. Our guy Matt Zemek has a pretty interesting concept. He basically thinks, and now this would have to be vetted out because I don't know that this could apply to every situation every year. But he believes that in situations where Oregon clearly won the Big Ten championship, they had the best record. You do not play them. Therefore, you do not give them a disadvantage of having to play an extra game to win the Big Ten championship. Oregon and Texas won their conferences. They had the best record in the conference. So there was no tie. So his solution is they don't have to play an SEC or Big Ten championship, but play 2 bubble teams from those conferences in place of the conference championship game, like Ole Miss and Alabama might have played in the SEC to further the resume discussion concerning those teams.
I mean, that could work too. But the immediate impact of this is we need to trim down the fat. We got a lot of empty calories on here, and their names are Indiana, SMU, Boise State, Arizona State. You cut those 4, this playoff is instantly going to have more competitive games.
And what we would have seen under Matt's scenario is the Big Ten game would have been Penn State and Indiana. And if the result of that game would have been what we would have expected it to be, then Indiana would have been, okay, that would have been their last chance. Okay, you lost 38-14. Bye, you're done.
No, that's fine. Listen, Mark, this is unsustainable if what we continue. I expect tomorrow happens, in which we're not going to have one single competitive game until the 8 p.m. window because, the cold weather people tell me that not a team below the Mason-Dixon line can compete, so I'm just completely writing off SMU for those people. And then Clemson doesn't have an offense, so we're currently 0-1 with close games. We'll probably be 0-3 until Ohio State, Tennessee, but we won't know until it happens, Mark. So I'm sure you got plenty of other callers. Good talking to you, and good luck to your Buckeyes tomorrow in the neutral/road environment. The
real MVP showing up and showing out, and we will get to Will here in just a second. I'm sure he's proud of his Irish. They won 27-17. That is what the final score tells us. It was really 27-3. Okay, that 27-3 basically tells us what the flow of the game was, the dominance of the game, how the game went. 27-17 was technically the final score. Technically, here's a damn good book. You got Disputed National Champions. Please order it. It's a good read. And I've had a number of requests for a signed copy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to batch order 50 of these, I guess, and I'm going to have them right here ready to go, but I'm going to just do this after this weekend because I've had about a number of people again. And so what you need to do, please just write me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail and let me know that you would like a signed copy, and that'll tack on just the shipping that you will have to deal with in that situation. So it's $9.99 plus the shipping, so roughly about $15. If you want a signed copy, just let me know. MarkRogersTV at Gmail. And unlike some other initiatives here at the Voice of College Football, please do not contact me if you are not serious about truly ordering a book, because I'm going on good faith to order a bunch of books based on the people that have requested a signed copy of the book. Disputed National Champions, give it a look. And you can see the description on Amazon, and you will enjoy it, I'm guessing, because everybody that's had feedback on the book has said that they love the book. So Disputed National Champions, look it up on Amazon. The link is in the description section of all the videos, including this one. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, we got our guy Will checking in. Will, what's going on?
Off the schneid, won that big postseason game finally. Off the schneid.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the performance was great. I mean, I'm proud of Riley Leonard. I think Riley was I think he was impressive. I mean, the one unlucky tipped interception was there, but I thought he made some great throws.
Well, the last touchdown that set
Mhm.
up the touchdown obviously was a great throw, especially considering how much he was harassed and grabbed by the shoulder right before delivering the ball.
Mm-hmm. And our defense played great. I mean, I know they scored those points. I guess you could call it garbage time at the end, and then
It was garbage time.
yeah, I thought the onside kick. I mean, I thought it was just a good onside kick. I don't know. Maybe Notre Dame should have done better, but I thought they did pretty well on that onside kick. But yeah, I'm just the thing that most concerns me is he just got to score in the red zone. Too many selling for field goals there. That won't work against Georgia, but gotta gotta prepare and hopefully. I mean, I don't think we'll get blown out against Georgia. I mean, the games were always both the 17 and 19 games were both close, and I think this team is better than those. So hopefully they can pull it out.
Somebody told me tonight that Notre Dame is going to be a 1.5 point favorite against Georgia. I do not believe that.
No, I don't either.
Okay.
I'm glad that Mitch Jeter made a field goal. Jeez, that was like as soon as he trotted out, I'm like, okay, this wasn't going to have a chance. But then he made it, and then he made another one, and then there was one that was low. But at least he made two. Like that was my bar is very low for him, so I'm just happy he at least made two field goals.
He was a good kicker at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't know what. I think it was the injury. Moose, of course, coming in to raid on my parade.
What's the problem with Moose? What's
He
he
doesn't
doing?
think. He thinks Georgia will blow out Notre Dame.
Does he think his team can win a playoff game this year? Is that what is that possibly what he's talking about? When's his team playing?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I don't know when they're playing.
Yeah. Can somebody look that up for me? When's Michigan's playoff game?
Yeah. I thought we would be able to get to Rourke, but I thought he would play better than he did. Like
he did not
he
play
was
well.
not
No.
great.
So I don't know if it was one of those deals where Notre Dame's pass rush, because he got a bit rattled, that carried into the dropbacks where there was no pass rush. And
I mean, he was
wasn't able to
probably.
get
I mean,
the ball.
Ohio State's secondary is still pretty good, but I think the Notre Dame secondary is probably the best that they've played all year. So I think maybe that plus the pressure was just bad, but even so, I thought he would be a bit better. But luckily for the Irish, he wasn't.
Yeah, I would have fought you on the Ohio State secondary comment at the beginning of the year, but I'll give that one to you.
Mm-hmm. 1.5 point favorites against Georgia. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, Vegas knows something.
That's what
I thought we would be. I thought the Irish would be 3-point dogs.
I had somebody contact me from SEC Unfiltered, and they wanted me to jump on at halftime. So I said, "What the heck?" So I jumped on at halftime, and they were getting my analysis. And then they made the comment that, okay, this game's over. Notre Dame's going to win. They're playing Georgia, and FanDuel or one of those outlets is saying that Georgia is a 1.5 point underdog. And I was like, I don't believe that, because I think Georgia with Carson Beck healthy would be a favorite against everyone.
The thing is that I have faith in my Irish in the Georgia matchup. They have a hard time stopping the run against teams that just smash mouth you. Like Texas was doing some rinky dink runs, and it didn't work. Like Notre Dame. I mean, Georgia Tech ran pretty well against Georgia, so I think the Irish will have success running the ball. But it's just Notre Dame against. It's just the recruiting rankings with their players and the Irish players that.
if you take out the 98-yard touchdown run, which again, I'm not one of those people that say eliminate that run and eliminate that and take out the 4 best plays or whatever. But just because obviously if he rips off that run at the Indiana 20, then he can only run for a 20-yard touchdown. So there's a certain statistical measurement that's not exactly accurate when somebody rips off a 90-yard touchdown run. It's obviously valid. It's to their credit, but it was dependent on where they were on the field as to how many yards they were going to gain. So my point being, outside of that run, was Notre Dame's rushing attack, I know it was consistent, but did it really rack up that great a yardage in this game?
I mean, I felt like they got good runs to like set up runs for first downs, but they weren't like gashing them that bad.
Yeah, so we've got...
But I felt like the runs were effective.
What happened here? So we got Jeremiah Love again, 8 carries for 108. So that's 7 carries for 10 yards outside of the touchdown run. And then we've got Jadarian Price, 11 for 32. Riley Leonard, obviously not a running back. I'm just talking about the running backs. And Aeneas Williams, 4 for 24. So I thought they held up pretty well against the run.
I mean, yeah, but I was just Georgia. Like when I was watching Georgia Tech, I was saying like I felt like Georgia Tech was gashing them. So I feel like Notre Dame will have success. I mean, even if they didn't do that well in this game.
I'm going to really have to dig into this matchup, but I have to admit I'm going to go into my research on this matchup thinking Georgia's going to win this game.
Do you think it'll be competitive?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I just hope Riley Mills isn't out. That would freaking suck. I don't know how
that's
bad his
bad
injury
to
is.
see that. That was really strange injury. Obviously, he was just basically doing a pirouette. Basically, I don't know what to call that. He basically, like, when you grab a pole, when you see one of those figure skater type deals, just spinning and just got it. It was just a leg whip kind of in reverse. And so, yeah, that was tough to see. And hopefully he is ready to go.
Yeah, I'm just happy that it's over. Like that long postseason drought was so annoying. So
Yes.
even though, I mean, I don't know how good of a team Indiana really is, but got it done.
I
Big
think you
stage.
know how good they are. I think we know how good they are.
Yeah.
I think they're an 8-4 team against a legitimate schedule.
Yeah.
They're a decent team. I think that Iowa could have shown up tonight, and we would have seen the same. We would have seen it played out differently, but we would have seen the same game in a sense.
That's fair. I mean, Jeffrey would not like Lee saying that. That
Well,
is fair.
we'll
have
the
an
way it
interesting
is.
conversation.
Can we really expect that if Iowa showed up tonight that they would have gotten whipped any worse than Indiana? I actually think that they would have held up physically better.
They would
than
have. You're
Indiana.
right. You're right.
Absolutely. Their offensive
You're right.
line, their run game, Caleb Johnson, and their defensive front. Yes.
George, the pirate clock. Oh my gosh. That was like a year ago. We were on Pigskin Pete and he was showing it his stuff. Yeah. Okay. So, but
I don't know what that is, but
yeah. I mean, you're right. They are. Are they really better than Iowa? That's a very fair comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Iowa would have scored at all, but
well, did Indiana really score? They
scored at the end.
Their first touchdown with 90 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
I think you're right, Mark. You're right.
Yeah.
All right.
You can take that one back to Jeffrey. See what he has to say. I don't know that I wouldn't put more confidence in Iowa playing in that game than Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what
Better
happens.
defense, better running
Yeah.
back.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I hope the games tomorrow are closer as a college football fan. Like, as a college football fan, I kind of hate this game, but obviously, as a fan of my team, I love it. But I hope the games will be close. I know the Ohio State Tennessee game will definitely be competitive, but I don't know about the first two.
Just I get your point, and you're right. I'm right there with you. I expect that to be the best game. It's the two best teams on the
Yeah.
same field, and it should be a really good game. But there's always a potential of a blowout.
Yeah.
Always. Most likely not. But if you told me right now that Tennessee won that game 34-10, I'd be pretty surprised, maybe borderline shocked, but it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think, okay, well, Ryan
Michael,
Day,
Michael Cooley, get out of here. That Oklahoma team would not score. They would not. That Oklahoma team, they're just like Iowa. They are Iowa with maybe more talent. They are Iowa.
yeah. But if you told me Ohio State wins tomorrow 34-10, I wouldn't be surprised either. But
Mhm.
I get your point. Yes, most likely that is the game of the weekend. And I
Mhm.
think we all know it. Conventional wisdom says that Texas is going to have an easy time with Clemson. Like that game's going to be 31-14, something like that.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Is Clemson really beating teams that are not as good as Clemson? Is Texas beating teams in the SEC not as good as Clemson by that much? They've really struggled on offense,
Mhm.
Texas.
Clemson's passing game needs to they need to click.
And they could click.
Mhm.
Antonio Williams is a decent player. Bryant Wesco is a budding star. They do have Jake Briningstool as a really good tight end. They could click if they can protect Klubnik. And I know Klubnik, based on, I think people's perception of Cade Klubnik is more based on last year.
Mhm.
And he's a much better quarterback this year.
Mhm. He is. He just needs to be able to have any time at all to throw.
He threw like 33 touchdowns this year.
Mhm. People just really look down on the ACC because
Except
Florida
DeReal.
State.
DeReal MVP doesn't. He has total respect for the ACC.
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you want to see on Saturday?
I want to see
Will?
one-score games that are competitive throughout.
That's all you care? You're not rooting for
I
anybody?
mean, I
in
am.
particular?
It would be nice to see an underdog win. One underdog win.
Okay. Which underdog would you want to see win the most?
Penn State fan. Oh no, Penn State and Notre Dame fans are always arguing, so it would be funny to see Penn State go down.
Okay. That's what I figured.
Yeah. But yeah, I want one of the ACC teams to win, just so that the two conference talks can be pushed down a bit too. But I would want SMU to win a little more. I really don't care who wins the Ohio State Tennessee game.
All right, Will. Anything else?
No, appreciate it, Mark.
Thanks, Will. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, let's address this super chat comment because Terrence Lucas says, and I appreciate the contribution, sir. I hate the narrative of the Big Ten being judged off of one performance by one team. You are correct, sir. So this is really stupid of Sean McDonough in particular, who I think is one of the very best play-by-play voices in all of college football. But who does he work for? Disney, ESPN. What contract do they own? The SEC. What contract did they lose? The Big Ten. Okay, they have not broadcast a Big Ten game the entire season. This is the first one. And yes, Indiana is definitely the fourth best team in the Big Ten. That would be their ceiling. They might not be the fourth best team in the Big Ten. They probably are. Although, again, I may want to put USC or Iowa on a field with Indiana, but they're in that range. They're the fourth or fifth best team in the Big Ten, or sixth, or whatever. Okay. So he was making all sorts of judgments about, well, the Big Ten, this may show us that the Big Ten really isn't that good. Okay, calm down. Calm down. All right. Let's get to our next call right here at the Voice of College Football. Once again, Disputed National Champions. The link is in the description section of the videos, including this one. So check it out, Disputed National Champions, $9.99. And again, if you would like a signed copy, please hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Thank you. Michael, what's going on tonight?
Not much, Mark. How you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing just fine.
Not bad. Hey, couple things. Was it on the? It seemed like to me early in the game, wasn't IU having success? And do you think when he overthrew the receiver, that's when the tide started changing on the interception in the first quarter?
Well, were they having success? Yeah, they had two successful offensive plays. Were they tearing it up for a full quarter? No, they had a couple successful offensive plays. Elijah Surratt had a
nice catch, by the way.
Hit a great catch, yes, down the field. And then I don't remember which plays they were able to convert after that, one or two, if that. That might have been the play directly before the interception, but it was
I think they had a run play and then the interception.
There you go.
But to me, the play that broke IU's back, and I want to say was a 98-yard run. That's what broke IU's back, in my opinion.
Sure. I agree.
Because that was a nice seal block. Could they caught a hold on it? Yeah. But, I mean, he got out of there too quick. And then, that, and then where was the tackling for IU tonight?
Well, the tackling on that play did not exist because nobody could get close to the guy.
No.
Notre Dame has two runners that are two of the toughest runners to tackle because of the speed, size combination, and the explosiveness. And shoot, their thighs are mammoth.
Yeah.
They're excellent runners. They break tackles against everyone.
Yeah, I know that firsthand experience quite well.
You do.
Back from September 14th.
Yeah.
One of them is Reggie Love, and the other one is Riley Leonard.
What's that?
I said their names respectively was Reggie Love and Riley Leonard.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, it seemed like to me though that was it? I don't know what it was. It seemed like, it seemed like the throws was there, but do you think Work might have just put too much oomph on it? Because a lot of those was catchable balls, I thought. Do you think he might put a little bit too much juice on it? Or do you think it was the nerves of the game?
I think that most of the time that Notre Dame had excellent coverage. I think that was most of the time. But when Curtis Rourke did have open receivers, I think he was just off. I don't think he was throwing the ball too hard. I don't remember any plays where I thought, wow, he put too much on that. Like, it wasn't like there was a swing pass out of the backfield and he hit the running back in the helmet with a ball because it was thrown too hard. I don't recollect any throws like that. I just think he was off. He was inaccurate, and he's generally accurate. Although, to compare the separation that Indiana receivers had on this night versus just about any other game this season is not comparable. That secondary did extremely well.
Yeah, they did. And I got to give it credit, Riley Leonard, for having a good game tonight, 200 yards passing. I said also that if they can respectfully someone stop Notre Dame's run game, will they enforce Leonard to pass? Well, obviously he did tonight. And I thought he should have had at least maybe two more touchdowns tonight. What do you think?
Well, I think Riley Leonard played the kind of game that Notre Dame needs him to play because they don't want him throwing 40 or 45 times a game. But if you really look at the rushing stats, and again, I said this to Will during his call, that Notre Dame looked like they controlled the line of scrimmage offensively, and their running backs were gaining positive yards, but they didn't really gash Indiana's defense. Look at these rushing numbers. Jeremiah Love went for 7 carries and 10 yards, other than that 98-yard sprint. Darian Price, 11 carries, 32, and Aeneas Williams, 4 carries for 24. That is nothing special.
Yeah, so you got to really give Indiana's run defense credit tonight, even though it doesn't look like they did a good job tonight.
Yeah, they gave up 1 play. Otherwise, 34 carries, 95 yards.
Now, let me ask you this.
Now, just to say one thing real quick, Michael. Obviously, you can't take the 98 yards off the, that's a backbreaker. So that counts. And number 2, I don't think Indiana's defense played that awful of a game. I thought they played relatively well. Thought the game was Notre Dame's defense took a team that scores 43 points a game and limited them to nothing, just grinded them to dust. That was the game.
Now, what did Notre Dame do that was more successful? Yeah, I mean, they scored 15 points against Ohio State. But to me, I thought Notre Dame did a better job than Ohio State did when they played. Do you agree or disagree? Defensively.
I think that Notre Dame, until I looked at these numbers, actually, when I first hopped on here, I thought that Notre Dame played a better game on the line of scrimmage than Ohio State did. But really, look at this rushing attack. Now, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers against Ohio State, but my recollection of the game, Notre Dame took control of this game earlier than Ohio State took control of that game. The game was 14-7 at halftime, and Ohio State won 38-15. They had a late touchdown, but they also gave Indiana a late touchdown that didn't matter.
Yeah.
The game was 31-7 with 10 minutes left in the game. Indiana couldn't throw the ball against Ohio State. I'm guessing that they had more success on the ground against Ohio State. They only went their top back, Justice Ellison, went 11 for 37, and went 10 for 34. I'm guessing their numbers were a little bit better against Ohio State. But Ohio State had to face a better version of Curtis Rourke. When he had open receivers against Ohio State, he was hitting them.
Yep. But no, I was going to say stuff like that. Now, all right, I know you've been doing some of the schedules preview for next year and stuff like that. Hopefully you'll get to produce soon.
Oh, we will. Of course we will.
I gotta ask you this. Everybody said this was a fluke for IU this year. What are people going to say next year if they're like 10-9-3, 10-2, or repeat as something than 1, even though they got a little bit tougher schedule next year?
What are they going to say?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they give them credit for it. I'm giving them credit for winning games against Michigan State, Nebraska, Washington,
Purdue.
Those kind of teams.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave Purdue alone this year, Michael.
I'm picking on Purdue, Mark. I'm picking on Purdue. You know I'm like that, but anyway, I digress.
Well, I'm picking on them too. That means I'm not bringing high school football into the discussion here tonight.
Mark, that wasn't high school football. That was more like pee-wee football.
Okay.
Anyway.
Basically saying that Indiana dominated and controlled games against marginal football teams. To their credit, that's what they did this year. So if they can turn around, and I don't remember their schedule off the top of my head. I know I put out a schedule preview, but they're playing a more difficult schedule in the Big Ten. They have 3 gifted wins to them again in non-conference play. But if they go 9-3, 10-2 next year, well, nobody can deny that they would have put up a nice record against a really tough schedule.
Now, do you think, devil's advocate, say like next year rolls around, they're 11-1 and finish maybe second or third in the Big Ten. They get to say stuff like that. Are you going to say it was a fluke? Do you think people, especially if the SEC people who think Bama should have gone in? And speaking of which, let me ask you this. Say Miami, South Carolina, Alabama, stuff like that. They got in, and what happened to IU happens to them tonight. What are people going to say about it?
Well, certainly people would have more respect for those schools, even if they would have lost as they did tonight. But you're going to a lot of different ifs here, Michael. Alabama wasn't on the field tonight, losing 27-3 in the fourth quarter, nor was South Carolina, nor was Ole Miss. And those teams did beat good football teams this year, unlike Indiana.
Yeah, and like I said during the season, you give them IU schedule, they're going undefeated, all of them. When is people
they're going to go undefeated?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're going to mostly. I mean, who would they have lost to if they had Indiana's schedule? Who would they have lost to this year?
Ohio State.
You think Alabama? Well, okay, maybe Ohio State, but do you think Alabama might have lost to them?
Do I think Alabama might have lost to who?
Ohio State.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Ohio State would beat Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama. They are a significantly better team than all three of them. Could they? Is it possible that Ohio State could lose to them? Obviously, yes. Anybody can lose to almost anyone. Yes, they could lose on a particular Saturday to any one of those three teams. They're very good teams, but Ohio State's better.
Yeah, that's like why I can't understand why they punish them for the schedule. And I got a feeling
you don't understand why who's punishing who for what schedule.
No. People saying, "Oh, they shouldn't be in because of their schedule." Is it their fault they had an easy schedule this year?
Yes.
So you're punishing IU for the Big Ten giving that schedule?
Yes, I've been punishing them all year, saying their schedule sucks. And that's the Big Ten's fault in regards to the 9 games played in the conference. But they scheduled 3 out of conference games.
I agree with you.
They played Western Illinois, Charlotte, and FIU. You name me one team in Power 5 football that would have lost to those three would have lost to any of those teams. Everybody would have gone 3-0 against those 3 teams.
Mark, I agree. I'm not talking about their non-conference schedule. I'm talking about their conference schedule.
That's what they can control. If they would have played the exact same Big Ten schedule, but they would have played Clemson, or they would have played Texas, or they would have played even a Kansas State or somebody of that degree in non-conference play, I would have been much lighter on them because, yes, they cannot control their Big Ten schedule, but their Big Ten schedule also sucked, and you have to evaluate the schedule.
And I agree with you on saying that. But non-conference schedule, I'm with you. And next year's is the same way. I think IU was just doing it so they could get 3 non-conference wins and get 3 wins and get to the bowl game.
Well, yeah.
I mean, look at
that's why they're doing it.
Did they play an FCS team this year? Yeah. Was it their only win? Yeah. But hey, at least they had a couple decent, well, not really decent, good team for the other non-conference portion of their schedule.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Anyway, I will try to get that to you after Christmas as far as the money for the book and stuff.
Okay, Michael.
Now, I'm trying to figure out how there's one other person who I want to have a copy of the book, but I'm still trying to figure out how she can go about getting it too.
Well, it says right on the screen how she can take care of that.
Okay, I was just wondering stuff like that. Are you doing a pregame show in the morning?
No, sir.
All right. Not bad. So just one show tomorrow night after the game. And
Absolutely.
Hopefully all 3 games will be a little bit better tomorrow.
Hopefully, all but one.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Michael.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mark. Take care.
It.
See ya.
Yes, we've got our book here, Disputed National Champions. It's a great read. Give it a shot. The link is in the description section of the videos. If you would like a signed copy, please hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. I am going to batch order a bunch of these because thank you to all the many nice people who would like a signed copy. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, we've got Rob on the line.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
I am doing just fine. Congratulations on your win tonight.
Yeah, thanks. I've been trying to catch you, but my work schedule's been keeping me out. I haven't been able to jump on in a minute, but yeah, I was gonna make sure I got on tonight because I see a lot of weird things from from Notre Dame fans. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're the best. We won a playoff game." It's like, okay, guys, it was Indiana, and I will say, okay, I underestimated Indiana's run defense. I didn't think it was legit. I thought it was a little overplayed. But they did a pretty good job against Notre Dame. They did a far better job against Notre Dame than I thought they would. I thought Notre Dame would lean on them and just shove the ball down their throat. And Love had that great touchdown run because he's a freak. But other than that, Indiana did a really. So I think one thing we can take away from this game, a lot of people are going to rip Indiana. They're going to say Indiana sucks. Indiana doesn't belong. Blah blah blah. I get so tired of narratives like that. Like, first of all, if your team lost 3 games, then don't be mad that you didn't make the playoffs. I don't care what conference you're in. If you didn't win the games that are put in front of your schedule, and I'm not saying that there aren't better teams I'm not saying there's teams that couldn't have done better than Indiana against Notre Dame tonight. Obviously, I think we can all agree with that. But my point is, Indiana deserved to be there based on what played out. They went 11-1 in the Big Ten. They have a good run defense. Their offense didn't, they weren't able to really do much tonight until garbage time. But Indiana deserved to be there, whether people like it or not. So first, that's my opinion on that.
Well, I think it's possible to have a bit of a split opinion on this, of which I do, meaning that, yes, Indiana did what was asked of them. They played a Big Ten schedule that they were given. It was way too light. It was unbalanced. It was weighted toward the worst teams and the most mediocre teams in the conference, but they got through it. Did they go 11-1 against the Big Ten? They went 8-1 against the Big Ten, and they played 3 horrific teams. They played 3 high school teams in non-conference play. So had they been left out of the playoff, I wanted to see how Indiana would perform in the playoff, but I would have not shed a tear had they been left out of the playoff because they refused to schedule a legitimate football team.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm 100% with you on their non-conference. Their non-conference was ridiculous. But we can at least look at this and say, well, it's Indiana. I mean, they're the losingest team in the FBS. Are they going to go out and schedule big? I mean, first of all, who wants to play Indiana?
Well, they should.
My second point was who wants to play Indiana?
If they want to be considered for a playoff,
right?
Then they need to schedule like a playoff contender.
No, I agree with you. I'm not arguing with you on that. I totally agree that their non-conference was terrible. And maybe hopefully going forward, now that they've got a little pep in their step, they'll start getting some better non-conference games going. But aren't these schedules made 5 years in advance?
Well, you could schedule FIU, Charlotte, and Western Illinois 75 years in advance, and 75 years later, they're still going to suck.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is Indiana has never got to this point before, right? This is the best season they've ever had, pretty much.
Yes.
So, now they can, because they weren't realistically, they weren't really realistically winning any big game in the past.
I totally understand your point. But
you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I understand your point. But my counterpoint is let's say if the College Football Playoff Committee would have went really to the wire and to the extent of evaluating these schedules and saying, you need a better strength of schedule. Sorry, you beat no one of consequence. They had the worst resume in the history of college football. I will go to the mat on this one. And do I have the numbers right in front of me? No, I don't. But I can almost guarantee that they have the weakest 11-1 record in the history of college football. The best team they beat went 7-5 Michigan, 7-5 Michigan, and then a couple 6-6 teams. Those are their wins.
Yeah, you're not going to get any disagreement with me on their schedule sucks and their non-conference sucks at all. I agree 100%.
My point is, if they would have been left out of the playoff, and then they would have said, "What were we supposed to do?" And then the retort would have been, well, you needed to schedule a decent non-conference opponent. And they would have said, well, We're Indiana. We didn't expect to be in the playoff chase. Therefore, we didn't schedule anyone. My response would have been, exactly. You're Indiana, so you just self-fulfilled your own prophecy that you don't expect to be in the playoff. Therefore, you didn't schedule anyone. So that's who you are. That's who you expect to be. That's how we're going to treat you.
Right, but here's the thing, Mark. And you said this briefly in a little bit earlier. You wanted to see how this game played out, right? I saw a good post on Reddit. It's actually the top rated comment on Reddit and on the CFP in regards to this game. If you go to like the Notre Dame Indiana Postgame thread or whatever, and the top comment was, "I'm so glad we saw this game, that we got to witness this game, because now we can unequivocally say that Indiana going in 11-1, they did not have a chance to but we didn't know that was the case, really. Most people, I would say most people thought Notre Dame was going to win, right? But there was some even pundits like Joel Klatt. He loves picking against Notre Dame. He called for the upset. He said Indiana was going to win. There was other guys, national media guys, saying Indiana was going to win. So there was some thought that this was a disputed game, right? Now it didn't play out that way. Even though Notre Dame, the last two games, they just kind of give up defensively at the end of the game, which is really frustrating. And they can't do that against Georgia. But, this was not a close game, and it played out that way. But we wouldn't have known if it wasn't played out. And if you take Indiana out, no, I'm not saying I would have thrown a fit. Like, if Indiana didn't make it, I wouldn't have been mad. But I'm saying that people that are pissed off about the result posthumously or revisionist history, we didn't know what the result of this game was going to be. It was only a 7-point, spread for Vegas. They thought it was going to be a competitive game. Vegas thought, and they're usually really good with these things. So I'm not going to just say, oh, Indiana's, I'm not as upset as a lot of people, I guess is what I'm saying, that Indiana was in the playoffs.
I'm upset about it. And like you, yes, 9/12 of their schedule, 3/4 of their schedule is against the Big Ten. They could not control those games. They played the schedule given to them. I would say that they played, out of those 9 games, 7 of them were played about as well as could be played. And then one was a loss to Ohio State that was not an embarrassment by any stretch. It was pretty similar to what we saw tonight. And then they played one game against a decent Michigan team, and they won, but not very impressively. So their performance was fine against that schedule. But I clearly stated a number of times leading into this situation, once they were selected and leading into this matchup, is Indiana one of the 12 best teams in the country? Absolutely not. Did they earn this spot? Sure, they earned it. They can't control their Big Ten schedule. And yeah, they earned it. I don't think they're one of the 12 best teams. I think Ole Miss is a better team. South Carolina is a better team. Alabama is a better team. Again, like I told Will, I don't know if you heard the call earlier, Iowa might as well have been out there tonight. Iowa's as good as Indiana is. Are you telling me that if Iowa would have been playing tonight, would the game have possibly been 27-3 with 2 minutes left in the game? Maybe Iowa would have played better than Indiana. Would Iowa beat Indiana next week if they played? I don't know. It's probably a toss-up.
Yeah, see, I don't want to get too much into the speculation. I will agree with you. I think Alabama, certainly Ole Miss. I've been very high on Ole Miss all year. I think they're potentially, in my opinion, when they play at their peak, the best team in the country. But they're sitting there with 3 losses and they're out of the playoffs. I guess my point is this: don't lose to Kentucky if you're Ole Miss.
Sure.
Don't lose to a bad Kentucky team. Don't lose to Florida.
Absolutely.
And that's, I guess that's my point, because I've seen a lot of people throwing their arms up in the air and they're pissed off and yelling at Indiana did what they had to do. They quote unquote earned a spot, and I'm not going to be mad about them being in the playoffs.
They did. And this is, again, not entirely under their control, but all those 3 teams that got left out from the SEC, they all showed that they can beat a good team.
Right. No, I don't disagree with you at all on that.
Multiple times they proved that.
And I'll say this: if Indiana can, this year, get a better non-conference schedule going, they have to. you cannot. I know their schedule's already set or whatever, but they got to do something because now they're in. I mean, they've always been in control of their own non-conference, but like they can't just keep doing the same thing and expect to get the same leniency. Like this year was kind of a thing where, like I said, I'm not going to throw my hands up. Now, if they have the same like ridiculous non-conference schedule next year, I think I looked at their schedule earlier. I think it's like worse or I don't remember. It's not a daunting schedule at all.
It can't be worse. Oh, you're talking about their Big Ten schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't remember what it is, but
well, anyways, but no, I totally agree with you though. I think on a lot of things, like I think Indiana's non-conference was awful. I think their schedule in general wasn't that great. Not that Notre Dame's was a world-beating schedule, but I think Notre Dame's just had better quality wins on their resume. And I think, like I said, most people thought Notre Dame would win. Vegas had them as a favorite for a reason. I don't agree with the real MVP. He thinks that these are all going to be blowout games. I think watch out for Clemson. I'm not saying Clemson's going to win, but I think underestimate them at their own peril. The only thing, and the reason I say that is not because I have any faith in Clemson's offense, not really. But I also don't have any faith in Texas's offense. Texas just doesn't impress me with their offense at all. Now, granted, they went up against Georgia twice, and Georgia will make a lot of teams' offenses look kind of mediocre. But I don't know. There's something about Clemson. I'm feeling a little bit like I'm not calling for the upset. I'm not betting on any of these games. I'm not a betting guy, but I don't think these are all going to be blowouts. And I don't think people should just assume Texas is going to roll over everybody just because they have a really good defense.
By all logic, Texas should win this game pretty comfortably, but
they should.
They're not scoring points against hardly anyone.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not so sure if Cade Klubnik doesn't get hot. Like anything can happen. Like you said earlier, when Will was saying that he knows, that certain team is going to beat certain team. No, we don't know that. Like,
his comment was definitely Ohio State Tennessee is going to be a great game.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
I understand where he's going with that.
I think it will be.
It most likely will be, but you can't say definitely. There's
right.
We used to live through Super Bowl games every year where people thought definitely this is going to be a great game, and it never was for 15 years.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was kind of annoyed with. I'm not going to call out any callers by name, but like blowouts happen in football. This is not a new thing, right? I mean, we've seen it. It's not just in college football. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it, like you said, in Super Bowls before. Like football, anything can happen at any game. So, like, yes, would you prefer all the first round or playoff games in general to be close? Of course, except for if it's your team. Obviously, you want them to win big. But, I mean, you can't just sit there and be like, oh, the playoff sucks because this game was a blowout. Well, like you said, let's let the games play out and see what happens. Could they all be blowouts tomorrow? Sure, maybe. But we haven't seen that yet. So let's hold the horses. Let's kind of just let it all play out and see what happens. I'm hoping for some good games. We'll see what happens. I don't really have any. I'm not like rooting against Penn State like other Notre Dame fans. I don't really care. I don't really have a favorite for like who gets upset tomorrow. I just want to see some close games.
Yeah, I am not going to resign myself to just an SEC Big Ten playoff and say these other teams definitely don't belong. I want to see it actually play out that way. We know that the ACC, maybe not necessarily this year, but has in the past been able to serve up, of course, a Clemson dynasty. And if they would ever get their act together, Miami. And if they would ever get their act together again, Florida State.
Yeah.
So they have the talent in the state or in that region and the ability to build nationally relevant, national title contending and winning teams in that conference. The Big 12 is another question. They're another deal. I don't think that they are up to it, but still, Arizona State gets their shot. The unfortunate thing about the Big 12 this year and what we thought was going to be the ACC with one bid is that if that team doesn't come through, like the entire conference is riding on that team. It's almost like the NCAA basketball tournament, that if your league gets 7 teams in and 3 or 4 of them completely are busts and get upset and underachieve, most everyone forgets about that if you've got 1 or 2 teams that advance and get to the Elite Eight, get to the Final Four. Well, then that looks good for the league, and everybody forgets about the 5 teams that underachieved. And the Big Ten and the SEC have that opportunity with 3 and 4 teams in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't. If we do like an all Big Ten, all SEC playoff, that would be it would be so boring, and
Yes.
B, if you really believe that you are the best league, like the SEC or the Big Ten or whoever, if you think you are the best league, you can't just have we're just going to play ourselves, or maybe we're just going to play ourselves in the Big Ten. You have to put yourselves in a pool with other conferences to say, yes, we went into this 12-team playoff and we came out the victor. Therefore, at least a representative of our conference is the best, which helps our conference look good as well. Like this notion of like it's only SEC Big Ten teams, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I
At least
agree.
in my opinion.
I need to see it play out on the field. And we just went through a 10-year playoff in which, yes, the Big 12 only showed up with Oklahoma and TCU once, and TCU was able to win a game. Oklahoma did not. And the Pac-12 obviously had Oregon win a game and then never showed up again, except Washington twice. Well, Washington won another game. So those teams, those conferences were able to win a scattered game here and there. And then, of course, again, Clemson, when they were an elite, was holding up the entire ACC by themselves. But I think you said it perfectly in your last statement. If the SEC and the Big Ten are the best and want to be shown to be the best, why would you not want to just let your best teams go out there and beat those other teams from the other conferences to a pulp and prove it?
Right. All right. I'll say a couple more things and I'll let you go. I know you got a lot of callers probably. I'm very glad this game ended. I wanted this game to end after like the first half, just because the injuries, man. Like Notre Dame's been injured, like one of the more injured teams all year. We've lost so many players. I mean, losing Kingston Viliamuasa really hurt our defense. He was a budding player. Obviously, Benjamin Morrison, an All-American, first round pick cornerback, which made our defensive backfield even better than it is. I mean, and we just keep losing. Like Riley Mills went out in this game, and we don't know what his status is. At least I haven't heard an update on that. He was out for the rest of the game after that injury. And Jeremiah Love, I mean, he was banged up against USC, and he was clearly struggling with an injury all game tonight. Our star defensive lineman, Howard Cross, he was battling through an injury today. He wasn't fully recovered yet. We just have a lot of guys that are banged up, and I'm just hoping in this 11-game break between having to go up against Georgia that they can get a little bit more healed, because, man, it wasn't looking good there with the injuries racking up. I just want to say one thing to all the IU fans that are obnoxious ones. There's a lot of good IU fans, but, man, there was some hilarious hate coming towards Notre Dame from IU fans. And you know who you are. Like, I'm just calling you out. I told you so. I've been saying Notre Dame would win this game for a while, but yeah, I don't have any problem with any fan base. I think there's toxic fans. I don't have anything against Ohio, Indiana fans, but man, some of their fans, though, as we all know, portions of each fan community can be ridiculous. So
yeah, well, first of all, Rob, I didn't know that they had fans. Number two, I've not heard from these fans other than our buddy Jeffrey, but yeah. I've not heard from these fans. I did have somebody within the network, and I'm not going to call out his particular name, and it's not Jeffrey, the Indiana fan, but somebody else.
Jeffrey's a good guy.
Who said to me this afternoon, they said, I'm thinking about betting on Indiana tonight. And I went, what? I said, no, don't waste your money. And I said, do not bet on Indiana. They're not winning this game.
That was like, that's what it was hilarious to me that Joel Klatt, again, he's priding himself on his picks this year. I think he's 62% against the spread or whatever. And he keeps losing out on these games with Notre Dame. I'm like, dude, I want him to keep picking against Notre Dame, because every time he does, they win. So, hey, pick against Notre Dame. And he probably will pick against Notre Dame and Georgia. I mean, I probably would too. That's to me, as some Notre Dame fans think that Notre Dame is off the schneid now. I don't agree. I think Indiana was a good team. I don't think they're some kind of juggernaut. Offensively, they've played really well this year, but this was not this was a good win for Notre Dame. It's a nice step in the right direction, but it's not a program-defining win by any stretch. They go in and beat Georgia, and basically it's going to be Georgia's home territory. That will be more of a program-defining win for them going forward. So go Irish. I'm glad we got the win. It's the first step in a couple of steps toward the title. So I'll let you go, Mark. Always a pleasure talking to you. Hope you have a great night.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, yeah, go Buckeyes.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Before I take the next call, we got Fuzzy Balls. Thank you so much for your contribution. Quinn Ewers has the weight of Austin on his shoulders because if Texas gets down early, the calls for Arch Manning will become louder and louder. Yeah, I have certainly already heard that from a lot of Texas fans or just college football people that believe that Arch Manning should be the starting quarterback at Texas regardless. Okay, next up here at the Voice of College Football, we got Drew Hookham.
Man, that last caller. I'll tell you what. Can you hear me?
I can.
The last time I think we spoke, my microphone was pretty crinkled. So if that's happening, I'll make it quick. I'll make it quick regardless. But it's just amazing to me that last caller comes off a win, then starts bitching about his injuries. Of course, they're about to play a team who has an injured quarterback, and it's not like all of us are stifled with all. I mean, I'm a Texas fan. Obviously, we've been without C.J. Baxter the entire season, and our whole offense is run off our run game. So we all got problems, man. So there's that. It's kind of like you just won a game.
I understand what you're saying, but I also believe that most people are focused on their own team, so they haven't necessarily scouted the opponent, and they're just looking at their own team and saying, hey, we lost this player and that player and this player and that player, and we wish we had them. So
I get that.
I see that differently than, let's say this was after they had just lost to Georgia and a Notre Dame fan was saying, well, we didn't have this player and this player and this player and this player, not knowing that they needed to be scouting the Georgia team to say, well, they didn't have X, Y, and Z either.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how one-sided people look at all of this, whether it's NIL portal, like this is the first year. Think of all the changes that happened at one time, really. You got NIL, you got portal, you got 12-team playoff. And so everything's not running perfectly. Of course, we're going to have to make a bunch of changes as time goes along. But like I told you soing over the first game not being as competitive as you would have wanted because you're a fan and that's not exciting to you. Come on, man.
So you're talking about people complaining about the 12-team playoff just because the first game was not exciting?
Yeah, I'm talking about the people who are,
Sure.
I told you soing, because not every single one of these games are going to be quote-unquote competitive. Well, that was kind of the point from the outset, was people didn't feel like they had their shot. Well, now we're going to see people get their shot.
True.
And yeah, sometimes it's not going to be competitive. But hey, guess what? I know a lot of people don't like this hot take, but next year we're going to remember that, as we should. And this idea of like, well, they won the schedule that was laid out in front of them. I thought the whole point of this was to get the 12 best teams in. So if that's the whole point, that doesn't matter. Obviously.
Okay, if we're going for the 12 best teams, then we did a horrendous job at this. We're not going for the 12 best teams. We're going for the 12 teams that earned the spots.
I thought it was stated that they were trying to put the 12 best teams in the 12-team playoff, minus the one freebie spot.
Now, when we were back to 4 teams, I heard that statement made considerably. We're looking for the 4 best teams in the country, and that's why we would have all sorts of conference champions left out, and we would have 2 teams from one conference and all of that business because they were going for the 4 best teams. But we we clearly have a system here that is not selecting the 12 best teams in the country.
And frankly, maybe we need to have a couple years like this to prove that. But we shouldn't forget what happens here. And so the next year, when there's a 3-loss Alabama, or whoever, Ole Miss, or whoever, South Carolina, whoever you like maybe we shouldn't put in the Indiana Hoosiers over one of these teams that we know would beat them. That's a better team.
Well, we don't know
I'm hoping.
anything. Hang on just
Well,
a
you
second.
never. Yeah.
We don't know anything. We don't know that South Carolina, Ole Miss, or Alabama would beat Indiana. We don't know that.
Well, what I'm saying is there will be a body of work over the course of the year. So if we let Indiana again off a cupcake schedule and they do the same thing, we will start to feel like we know that.
Well, we would be foolish to say we know that. I get your point. I'm right there with you. I believe that Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama are all better than Indiana. I also think that Iowa is just as good as Indiana, and they went 8-4. So this was just a circumstance where the league did a poor job of scheduling, and Indiana just scheduled 3 high school teams. See, this is what's so illegitimate about Indiana's performance and their credentials is they played 3 teams in non-conference play that every team in the Power 5, every team, Wake Forest, Oregon State, whoever, Baylor, Houston, all of them would have won all 3 of those games, just like Indiana. So those 3 games were completely meaningless. They were practically the only team in the country that played 3 completely meaningless non-conference games.
I can even give them a pass on that this year because we didn't really. There are so many unintended consequences of all of these changes that we're all seeing now, which are to me are fine. They just got to be worked out. Of course, people that were against NIL or against 12-team playoff or against portal moves, they're gonna jump on this. And in my opinion, this is year 1, and so year 1, Indiana got in. But I do think these will all be fixed, including a lot of the NIL stuff, including the portal situation that's going on. They got to move the date back. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot of folks I told you so over some BS, some stuff that's really, if you take a step back, we all agree that this has been one of the best college football seasons ever. And it looks like college football is, obviously money-wise on the incline, but just from a fan perspective, even better. Like, think about it. We just had a playoff game today. We wouldn't have had that. People are mad about a snooze fest, but we would not have had that game.
Absolutely. All right, man. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
I appreciate the
call. All right, man.
Good
Appreciate
night.
it.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's wrap it up. We got 2 more calls, I believe. And again, disputed national champions, it's only $9.99. I can just about promise you, and much like when we say we know that this team would beat another team, I cannot guarantee you for sure that you're going to love this book, but I can almost guarantee that you will love this book, and it's only $9.99. The link is in the description section of all the videos, including this one. And again, if you would like an autographed copy, I am going to be batch ordering for the autographed copies that people would like because we've got a number of requests. So I do appreciate those people that would like a signed copy. So hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail to let me know that you would like one as well, and we will get that arranged. I wanted to address the comment on the screen from our buddy Johnny Bays, who said, who did not schedule 3 high school teams? The minority of the FBS. Well, forget the rest of the FBS. Let's deal with the power conferences because it doesn't matter about the rest of the FBS. So in terms of the power, and even if we included the rest of the FBS, obviously the group of 5 teams, actually the group of 5 teams, it's funny because they play the toughest non-conference schedules. Go grab a MAC schedule. Go grab any team in the MAC. Their out of conference schedules are brutal. Kent State played Tennessee and Penn State as part of their non-conference schedule. The MAC, the Sun Belt, the Conference USA teams, their non-conference schedules are brutal. So let's eliminate them, first of all, because we're not talking about those teams, but secondly, because they do schedule brutal non-conference schedules. So we're just talking about the Power Five, and I continue to say the Power Five because there is technically a Pac-12 with 2 teams. All right. Let's look at the teams that made the playoffs. So the one team, in addition to Indiana, that did not play anyone non-conference is Ohio State. Their non-conference schedule was, as I blasted them many times, a joke. However, there was a circumstance involved there. I think if you follow college football, you understand that Ohio State is not trying to schedule a horrific non-conference schedule. They always play somebody. Oklahoma, Oregon, when they were out of the conference, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Ohio State got caught in a situation in which they had Washington scheduled. Washington obviously joined the Big Ten. Therefore, the game was dropped because they were then a conference member. So that's what happened there. So Ohio State didn't play anyone. But, of course, their Big Ten schedule made up for it because they had Oregon, Penn State, et cetera, the teams that Indiana did not play. Okay, everybody else that made the playoff played somebody outside the conference. Just run them down. Clemson played Georgia and South Carolina. Can you imagine if Indiana's non-conference? Think about this. Clemson's ACC schedule was probably on par with Indiana's Big Ten schedule. Okay? Because Indiana's Big Ten schedule was horrific. Clemson, did not play SMU or Miami in the regular season. So their ACC schedule was pretty horrific as well. They were equally as bad, pretty much. Aside from, of course, Indiana playing and losing to Ohio State. But outside the conference, Clemson played Georgia and South Carolina. They played 2 of the 10 to 12 best teams in the country. Okay, that's Clemson. Who else made the playoff? Texas. They played Michigan, non-conference. Okay. Georgia played Clemson and Georgia Tech. All right. Who else made it from the SEC? Tennessee, they played NC State. That was their non-conference game. Much better than anything Indiana, way beyond anything Indiana played. Penn State, of course, played West Virginia. Certainly did not turn out to be any kind of great football team, but they were 6-6. They're a Big 12 team. They're a power conference team, far beyond anything that Indiana played. Oregon played Boise State. Okay, enough said there. Boise State played Oregon. Enough said there. So who are we missing? Notre Dame, they play obviously nothing but a non-conference schedule. So I believe we've covered all the teams that made the college football playoff. Arizona State, they played Mississippi State. And none of them played the schedule that Indiana played non-conference. That is my point. So, yes, all the playoff teams and even the non-playoff teams did play better schedules, non-conference in Indiana. Almost everybody scheduled somebody. Almost everyone. All right. George is stopping by tonight. George, what's going on?
Mark.
Yes.
Please quit saying Indiana. My brain's going to blow up. Stop it. This is the playoffs, man.
It's kind of
this should be Georgia, Texas, and 2 other teams. What are we doing here? This is ridiculous.
George, talk about your Gators today.
Oh, look, it's an afterthought, Mark. It's an afterthought. Everybody knew Florida was going to be Tulane. That was like a scrimmage, you know?
Yeah, sure looked like it.
It was. Hey, that guy, Will, how the hell did you get him on your TV show? Mark
Who?
Rogers TV, the voice of college football. How'd you get Will on here? That was incredible.
How I got Will on? Our buddy Will?
Yeah.
He's on all the time.
Oh. Well, I knew that. And what about that Rob guy?
Rob. Yep. Good guy.
We're going to have to put a time limit on Rob in the future, okay? Like 5 minutes max.
Yeah, well,
God
I think
damn.
we're going to put a time limit on everyone.
After about an hour,
Indeed.
I'm starting to think of questions I want to ask him. I mean, it's like you told us everything else. Like, when is Jesus coming back? You know, like, did we miss something there? Or
What do you got going on tonight, George?
well, you saw how Will's lights, his eyes lit up when he saw my comment about that pirate clock.
I have no idea what you guys
That's
were
some
talking
funny
about.
shit. When Will, that guy was talking to you.
I know what Will was referring to. I know that happened. I have no idea what he was talking about.
Well, during your show today, his eyes lit up because he saw my comment. I was talking about a pirate.
But I don't know what your comment was about.
I know. I'm about to tell you in deep detail. One day, Uncle Pete, and I'm just joking, I said that wrong on purpose, but Pigskin Pete was his show just came back on in the middle of the night. And he didn't know it, right? And you can hear all this happening off camera. Him and his wife are trying to decide, why is the show still going like 2 hours after the show went off, you know? And we spent like 2 hours that night, me and Will and Pete and his wife and some other people just laughing and joking around. And Pete called it his late night accidental show because you better make sure you turn your shit off when you turn your shit off. You follow me? Because YouTube just kept going. I said, I'm glad you didn't do anything wrong in that room, you know, because we all listened to them in their house for like 2 hours before they realized they're still broadcasting. You follow me?
Nice. I follow you.
That's funny stuff, man. Anyway,
All right,
I have this. No, I have this clock from Disneyland or Disney World. It's a pirate clock. And it goes, yo, yo, yo. And the pirate dances. It's a red eyes, glowing eyes, dancing, singing. And I showed it to them on that. And I want to give it to Will, but I don't know how to get it to him. He's the guy that asked for it. He said, I want that clock. I've never used it. It's been in a box for like 18 years. You know, you can have it. It's a good clock, though, man. It's funny as shit. It goes, yo, yo, yo. It's a wonderful life for me. It actually sings the song. And the eyes blink red and shit. Mark.
Yes, George. I'm just.
I finally found you. I finally found you a sponsor after 12 years or something. But I got it. No, this is a lockdown. This is a lockdown. Okay. I got you like 5 sponsors.
5. Okay.
Listen to me. There's a channel called SEC Sidelines with Rob Brown and Buddy Martin. And you know what I mean? It's the Southeastern Conference channel, right?
All right.
They love me. They will do anything for me, you know?
Wow.
So what's going to happen here?
Now.
What's going to happen is you have to call them up and introduce yourself, and you can use this video as evidence. All their sponsors are now your sponsors, and you don't have to run no commercials. All you have to do is talk about Landmark Ford and a couple country western stores and a vitamin shop. Man, oh man, they got it going on.
Buddy
Smart.
Martin Show and SEC Sidelines podcast.
It's Rob Brown is the guy you want to talk to.
Okay.
And listen,
All
Mark.
right.
Listen, Mark. I'm very discriminating about college football. You follow me? I'm very discriminating, very, very particular, like Rain Man almost, you know? I only like you and those guys. You know, you are the fucking tip of you're the pyramid, the little thing at the top, the little
I'll
the
take
crown.
it, George.
They're gonna love you, dude. They don't do nothing milk. They are archiving college football. Mark, they're archiving it. You know, they're telling all the old stories. You can tell stories like when I was at Mississippi State covering baseball or whatever. What were you doing? Where were you? Mississippi. You were somewhere in Mississippi.
Yeah. Sports director at the famed WCBI. Absolutely.
Yeah, listen, they know everybody's name. They are friends with all these guys. Hey, I'm going to get you a membership in their hunting club. You know, some good shit, man.
Well, George, I'm going to do that, actually. I'm going to take you up on that.
Oh, look, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. Show them the video where I just said it's a done deal. Your sponsors are their sponsors. Let's start out at 12,000 a year, split it up, but it goes up from there, you know.
All right, George.
Something fair.
Well, I'm going to move on right now, but I am time-stamping this baby.
I have one thing to say about football before I go, okay?
All right.
I don't like this participation trophy bullshit. That was just like, are you serious? Notre Dame versus Indiana? Do you think Notre Dame or Indiana are going to win the national championship, Mark? What a waste of every 3 hours of everybody's time. Are you serious? Notre Dame versus Indiana? Are you serious? For the national championship of football. Give me a break. Quit wasting my time. Mark, me and you need to reschedule. Every April, we will put out your schedule for you. Can you get to work on that? Me and you, we will schedule everybody. No more of this bullshit.
Let's do it. I would love it.
Love you.
George, we appreciate you, man. You're the best.
I'm always here for you, Mark.
I know you are. You have proven that.
Tell Will we're going to figure out how to get him that damn pirate clock. This is important, man. I'm getting old. I got to figure out how to get him this clock. He wants this clock.
Okay. All right, George. Have a good night.
They probably sell them on. Tell them they probably sell them on eBay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just did. All right, George.
All right. I'll let you go this time. Bye.
That's our guy, George. George has commented to this channel more than anyone in the history of the channel. You could probably comment 1,000 times a day for the next year, and you will not catch up with George's number of comments on all these channels that we produce here at the Voice of College Football. So George has a special place here at the Voice of College Football. That's all there is to it. All right. We've got a couple more calls. We got a super chat coming in, and we got, of course, Fuzzy Balls letting us know Vandy and OU don't make the postseason without Bama's generosity. True. Not that anyone's quite aware that Oklahoma and Vandy are actually playing in the postseason the way people are just focused on playoff games anymore. But Vandy is playing somebody in the ACC. They are playing, Georgia Tech, right? And Oklahoma's playing Navy. It's an interesting assignment there. All right. Buckeye Mike stopping by. Buckeye Mike, what's going on?
How you doing, Mark?
I'm good.
Oh man. So a couple of things. So first of all, I want to give a metaphorical moment of silence, not a legit one. to the University of Marshall. They were actually supposed to play Army in their bowl game, and now because of losing like 25, 30 players and their head coach, they had to pull, and that's why Army plays Louisiana Tech.
Correct.
And then bouncing off of the last call, talking about Indiana. Okay. Indiana, from everything the media has told me, because nobody can have an actual opinion anymore, is a carbon copy of SMU as far as the schedule, as far as the conference schedule, because they both apparently, outside of SMU playing Clemson, they both apparently played the bottom feeders of their conference.
Generally, yes. Yeah, I'll go along with that. SMU played Louisville, and that was the best game that they played in the regular season in their conference.
Right. The difference, though, and here's the thing. Okay, when I hop on X or Twitter most of the time, because I refuse to call it X, or Instagram, and I see all this junk from like Alabama fans and Miami fans, mostly some Ole Miss fans, talking about this is a crapshoot. Bama deserved to get in because this game would have been a lot closer if it was Bama Notre Dame. I have one thing to say to that, and that's don't lose 3 freaking games then.
Absolutely.
Don't lose 3 games so that you can't win your conference. Don't lose to the, like the previous guy said, being generous to Vandy and Oklahoma, getting them to 6 wins. Don't do that crap. You don't deserve to be in. In my honest opinion, you don't. Now, are these the 12 right teams? Probably not, but you know, it's hit or miss. It's like when the bracket came out and I said, okay, well, that's junk that they said they weren't going to quote unquote disqualify teams for losing the conference championship, but head to head automatically goes out the window because you put Penn State ahead of Ohio State. It is what it is at this point, but that was my biggest nitpick.
I think it even goes beyond that, Buckeye Mike. So here's my 3 points there. And Ohio State, number one, they beat Penn State. They beat them head to head, of course, and they beat them on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And they also played a game in which I know they only won by 1 score, but if you watch the game, they had control of the game. They outplayed them. They outscored, outgained them by about 150 yards. It was a clear victory. Okay, number 2, if you match up the 2 Oregon games, Ohio State played a much superior game against Oregon. You know, they lost by whatever you want to say, a pass interference call, 1 second, 1 play, field goal range to win the game. They lost to Oregon at Autzen Stadium. Penn State was down by 2 scores most of that game. And was it a fun game? Fun to watch? A lot of offense? Yes. But Penn State was not anywhere close to Oregon in that game. And point number 3, who was the next best team in the conference? Indiana. Penn State did not play Indiana. Ohio State beat Indiana by 23 points. There should be no comparison between the 2 schools in regards to ranking them.
Yeah, and that's why, like, at the end of the day, I just kind of like, it's whatever. At least we got in. I mean, that's the main focus right now, is just to get in and win the whole thing. And that's not just, oh, you're an Ohio State fan. You're saying it because you're an Ohio State fan. No, Tennessee fans should be thinking the same thing. Penn State fans, even though you can't trust James Franklin, should be thinking the same thing. All of these teams that are still in it should be thinking the same thing. And I know it's nobody in here, but can we as a whole, I'm talking about people in general, can we please grow up and not feel like we have to give death threats to people over the dumbest things, whether it's because you're a fan of a team or whatever? I mean, I don't appreciate half the stuff that I find in my inboxes.
Okay, well, hopefully we've got no death threats here
No, yeah, nobody from here. I'm just saying, like, in general.
All right.
But anyway, for those who are still here, if you haven't already, but most of you probably have, subscribe to the channel, hit the like, and my 3 picks for tomorrow: SMU, because like I said, I don't trust James Franklin. I'm gonna go Clemson and Ohio State.
All right. Well, Buckeye Mike, appreciate you stopping by.
Yep.
All right. Last up tonight. Look at this. We got Joe stopping by.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Joe.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty darn good. It was
Good.
my team out there tonight that made me proud.
Yeah, absolutely. They did.
Yeah. But I was wanting to talk to you about, because of all this chatter among the Ohio State fans about Ryan Day's job, how do you feel about him? I'm assuming you want him to be back.
How do I phrase this? I don't care if he comes back.
Wow. I'm shocked.
So don't misinterpret that. I didn't say that I want him fired either. First of all, you've got to give me a conclusion to the season. As soon as they lost to Michigan, I don't know how many people were calling for his job, and I was like,
Right.
well, hang on here. They got to finish the season. So losing the first game to Tennessee and going on to win a national championship are 2 completely different conclusions to me.
Right.
So it all depends on what happens during this playoff to a certain extent. So no, I am not going to lose 1 second of sleep if Ryan Day gets fired Sunday
Do you have anybody that you're thinking about
after
that
they
you'd like
lose
to
this
see?
game. But if they
Yeah.
bring him back for next season, do I think that Ohio State's doomed to mediocrity? No, they're recruiting top 3 classes and fielding excellent football teams. So they just need to work on a few things. Do I have anyone? Ohio State fans seem to want Mike Vrabel. I think he's been pretty clear about not wanting to coach in college. I thought I would be okay with that hire. I don't see anybody out there that would make me react the way I did when they hired Urban Meyer,
Right.
which was, I told everyone immediately that they just won a national championship. I thought that that was the best hire possible. That person really doesn't exist out there, or if he does, he's at a job that he's not going to leave. Kirby Smart.
Would you like Kirby? Would you like Kirby to be at Ohio State?
Sure. I'll take Kirby Smart at Ohio State. Absolutely.
What about
Heupel? Yeah, I would be fine with that hire.
What about that guy from Arizona State? Is it Lanningham or?
Well, Kenny Dillingham.
Dillingham, yeah.
I would like to see a little bit more proof out of him, but wow, based on what he's done thus far, that's been pretty impressive.
Nice turnaround.
Absolutely. And he's only like 34 years old.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna, I don't know, I don't, if you want to get to the next caller you can, but I was gonna give you a little bit
You're
of
it. You're it, Joe.
Oh.
You're wrapping us up tonight.
All right. Then what I was thinking about is that, these playoffs, I thought the committee has done a pretty good job the last 2 years. They're stuck in the parameters of having to give buys to conference championship winners, and that's where the bug is in the system. So if it was up to me, I would expand to 16 teams. I would start the season in mid-August.
Whoa.
And then I would have 2 buys, based around the kids' schedules for their midterms and then finals for each semester. Give them the buys during those weeks. I don't know if that's possible for every single team, like how that would work, but I would also take away the conference championships so that you have that week to have 16 teams playing. And then you just make it 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, 3 versus 14. And then that way, I don't think you can complain about a number 17 team not getting in, right? But this year, like there's 3 teams that people really feel strongly about that should have made it in. Uh, like South Carolina and maybe Miami and maybe Florida, Ole Miss. Like you could name quite a few to round out 16, and you wouldn't be wrong. I don't think so. I think if you just can get rid of the conference bye, that's the big bugaboo of the whole system, because that's why you're seeing a 3-loss Clemson team like barely hanging in, because they won a conference, they got into the last spot, right? And Boise State, a group of 5. That's another thing I would do away with. It's like, just by the kindness of the NCAA's heart, they want a group of 5 representation. Well, if they didn't earn it, then they don't think they should get in. So that's
All right,
my
Joe.
suggestion.
You ready for me to take off on all this here?
Please.
Okay. Boise State, under the current conditions, would be in the playoff,
Right.
regardless of their conference championship situation.
I agree.
They would be in the playoff. Okay. They're
worthy.
ranked high enough to be in the playoff.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, is that regardless of where the playoff stops, how many teams are in the playoff, there is always going to be an argument about who got left out. Because and actually, the further you drag this out, meaning when there was 4 teams in the playoff, there was usually only 1 team, hardly ever 2 teams, usually just 1 team that you could make an argument had as good a resume. Either they got screwed, or the argument was typically just that their resume was as good as number 4. But now that we've extended it to 12, there's 3, 4, 5 teams that we could argue got screwed, and they should have been put in. Any one of those 3 or 4 or 5 teams.
But that's only because they give these buys. But go ahead. Sorry.
The further you stretch it out, the more because the further you go down the list of quality teams, the more there are more teams on that level. Like if you had a 32 team tournament, then you would have like 14 or 15 teams that have a similar resume to number 32. So you're only going to extrapolate the arguments. Now, to your point, I get it that if you're number 17 in the country, shut up. You're probably 8-4, and you have no argument. But we could say the same thing about number 13 now. Be quiet, Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss. You're 9-3. You lost 3 games. You had every opportunity. What this system does that the old system didn't do is you have no excuse, because you have the control over winning a conference championship. In the old system, you could win a conference championship and be left out of the playoff.
Right.
So at least every conference is represented now.
Florida State last year, right?
What do you mean Florida State last year?
Were they a conference championship winner and they were 13-0?
Yes.
And then they got left out.
They got left out.
Yeah.
So all the conferences are represented now.
Mm-hmm.
So go win your conference championship, and you cannot be left out of the playoff. In the past, you could win a conference championship and be left out of the playoffs. You could go undefeated and be left out of the playoff. That can't happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you want 16 teams because you don't want buys. And I am with you on buys. I don't like buys. They work better in the NFL because you can objectively lay down criteria, and the teams' schedules are all almost identical. They're very close. So
there's a limit. Like there's not a group of FCS teams that you can schedule.
No, and there's a situation where if you're 15-2 in the NFL and you win a division championship, and there's this other division champion that's 11-7.
Right.
Well, you clearly, against a very comparable schedule, prove to have earned the bye. In our situation, these schedules are so completely different, and hardly anyone plays each other, that to award a bye is a bit arbitrary. Other than in this case, there is an objective criteria to win a conference championship. The issue with the 1 through 16, where you just rank the teams, is then what's it matter if you win a conference championship? Why even have conferences?
Well, that's why I'm thinking, why even have conference championship games? Even
Why
Reese
have
Davis
conferences?
about
Why
what was
even
it?
have conferences?
Well, they do that for the money. That's how those first started.
Well, we do it
coming
all for
about.
the money. It's
Yeah.
all done for the money.
No, but I mean, like those other schools, like the lower end schools, like Vandy and Kentucky and Arkansas, like they needed to have that affiliation to be able to survive, basically. I think. I mean, it seems to me like, and it also seems like, like they cater to the top end of those conferences teams with officiating. And the lower teams don't really complain about it because they're really happy to get the scraps of money that the conference affiliation gives them. So
Have you been keeping track of the officiating?
I think that they cater to, because they want their conference to be well represented. So if there's a game that's close, and there was a few of those this year, we saw a pretty exciting year. To where, like Miami, for example, they kept on getting these refs to give them games, the Cal game, and there's another two, I think, that they were just like, really, these calls were like, where did that come from? I mean, what are you doing? And it still wound up not helping them, but they still got left out, but they wound up 10-2. It's just that they lost their last two at the end of the year, so that screwed them.
Well, I understand your point. I don't necessarily agree with it. And if I did agree with it, I'd stop watching the games.
Yeah, I don't know. As an independent, a school that is independent, I mean, I love playing these conference teams. Like only up till 2 years ago, Jack Swarbrick was the first AD to start giving them these FCS teams to play. But I think he was looking at the way teams like Indiana were scheduling, like all these really, and the SEC is actually tremendously, they were doing a lot of this bullshit scheduling these nothing teams, right? Because they say we have the best conference in football. So, our out of conference games, we need those just to get wins, But I don't know. It seems to me like it's coming to, but actually, with all these changes now, with these mega conferences, you can't even say what might be now, because what I think is going to actually wind up becoming is that there's all these conferences these players, like they're going to think they're too good for the conference, like Georgia, Alabama. They're going to say, screw that money. We're going to go independent and take on a pay-per-view, or Peacock. Or somebody, we have a great following and we're going to make just as much money through that. So, I mean, like, I see it coming down to all about the money. It's been that way for 20 years, but, 30 years. But I see a real, because the NCAA has no grasp of power. Like, they're this name. They have a plate on the podium that says NCAA, but that's about all they have. Like the conference commissioners don't listen to them.
No.
They do what they want. So I think it's going to wind up being even more chaotic as we come down the road. The only saving grace might be an expanded playoff where, you're going to just be able to go with. The committee should be able to get 16 teams right. Because I think they have to do away with the conference championship bye. That's the main thing. I don't think conference championships, I mean, you get a trophy to win that. That's all good and fine. You don't need to get a bye in addition. It's like, you got your accolades, and now it's like, are you the best team? Like, should Clemson be up there? Should well, this time it's Boise State. Should Arizona State be in that? And trust me, I love Boise State. I think Dylan Gabriel should have won the Heisman, and then because he beat Junti head to head, and I think Travis Hunter should have finished third, but that's just another side thing.
Dylan Gabriel is the best college football player in the country.
That's what I think this year. Yeah.
You think Dylan Gabriel is the best college football player in the country?
The quarterback for Oregon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, who is better?
Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter didn't do a lot of scoring.
He
plays on both sides of the ball, and he's not going to do that in the pros because they're going to hit hard.
We're not talking about what's going on in the pros. We're talking about who is the best college football player in America this year.
I know. I don't think it
wasn't Dylan Gabriel.
Well, I don't think
anybody. Guy with 22 touchdowns and 6 interceptions.
But he's a guy that nobody could beat.
Nobody could beat? Well, he tends to have 21 other guys playing offense and defense with him. Believe me, if Dylan Gabriel played for Colorado, he would have gotten beaten quite a few times.
It's speculation. I mean, I don't see him ever like choking. Like, I don't think
why Dylan Gabriel? Why shouldn't Jordan James be the Heisman Trophy winner? He plays for Oregon.
Because Dylan Gabriel
does Johnson be the Heisman Trophy winner? He plays
because Dylan Gabriel touches the ball every single play.
So does the center. The center touches the ball more than Dylan Gabriel does. Why not?
Well, trust me,
give him the Heisman Trophy.
I would. Well, that's being silly, right?
No, it's not being silly.
Well, who would you give it to then? Who's the best center? Who's worthy of a Heisman Trophy at center?
All sorts of players could be.
Oh, come on now.
You're telling me Dylan Gabriel is the best football player in America?
That's just my opinion. Nobody's beaten him. He played Junti head to head. He beat him.
What are we doing? Oh, did they play tennis or pickleball or what did they do? He beat him head to head.
Played as two teams.
Football. Joe, come on.
As the leader of both of their teams, right?
Who said Ashton Genty was the leader of his team? He's a running back.
He's clearly the leader. He's clearly the leader.
He's clearly gets the ball more than, and not that much more than some other players on their offense.
Come on, Mark. This last call, you're busting my chops.
Yeah. Travis Hunter's the best football player in America, and that's who the Heisman Trophy is supposed to be awarded to. Not the quarterback.
I don't see it. I mean, he was
quarterback who plays for the number 1 team in America. So by your criteria,
he's exciting to watch. I'll give you that.
By your criteria, all we have to do is go through each season, and the quarterback of the number 1 team in America should win the Heisman Trophy. They would be the Heisman Trophy winner.
That's not what I said. I mean, that wouldn't ring true in every instance. It's just, in my opinion, this year, what I've seen from Dylan Gabriel is that he's the best quarterback on the field, and every week that he plays, he was better than Howard. Come on. They won by a couple, but
I'm not comparing Dylan. I'm not proposing that Will Howard should be the Heisman Trophy winner.
I know. I'm not either. But, it was a close game. Since it was a close game, you can make an argument to say, well, Howard played him pretty tough. Well, there's a lot of teams that played a lot of teams very tough. It's just from what I've seen. And Mark, I said it in your room there, and I've been doing it for years. I tape about 8 as a minimum a week of games to watch, and probably like 11 is more than norm. So, I mean, I'm a total freak of college football. That's great. I just love it, but I hate what's happening to it. It's now the pros. Yeah, kids are getting paid, and I'm not happy about that. There was a time when I wanted kids to get paid, because why should the colleges get all that TV money and the kids don't get a thing? But now, like, the kids are in full charge of things. It's like now they're taking charge of everything. They're calling the shots, and the NCAA is not reeling them in. Like they're not saying maybe we can have a college is allowed 7 transfers per year. That way, that transfer portal isn't like 13,000 kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you in principle, but legally, that's much more difficult to pull off.
Well, if it's a university's rules, they're their own entity, unless it's a state school, I guess. But I mean, there should be some way. I just got nope.
The only way that I see this transfer situation getting under control is to give the players contracts. Sign them when they enroll at the school and they're given their scholarship, and this may in fact happen. And for as much as most of us don't want to hear this, when these players start to officially get paid in 2025 and get a portion, which is estimated to be about 22% of the television and media rights revenue, then you can legally, I believe, I'm no lawyer, but then sign them to contracts coming out of high school. And that's going to keep them from transferring. Sign them to 3-year
either
contracts.
that or either that or Senator Blutarski. Maybe they'll stay in school for 30 years.
You lost me on that one.
Well, I mean, like, what's the hurry to get out of college if you're getting paid under contract?
It's called eligibility.
Well,
you only have so much eligibility, 4 years.
Well, there's a lot of old guys in that league right now, and I don't know. Who knows?
All right, Joe. Well, thanks for the call.
You bet.
Have a good one.
Pleasure. Good luck for your team tomorrow. Good luck to everybody for their teams, and Merry Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas to you, Joe. Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely. If I fail to say this on tomorrow night or any shows that we do prior to Christmas, Merry Christmas to everyone and happy holidays, no matter what you celebrate, and Happy New Year as well. I do have some plans over the Christmas holidays, which may take me away from this a little bit, but of course, we're going to be here as much as possible. Speaking the truth, as we always do, preaching the truth of college football. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. One more time, disputed national champions, great read. If it's not, then you come and you call me and let me have it. But every feedback from everyone that we have heard from has said disputed national champions, great read. So the link is in the description section of the video. And also keep in mind that if you would like an autographed copy, that we are going to batch order those for you. So I just want to get a fairly accurate count on how many autographed copies, since we've had 20 or 25 requests to this point. So I'm trying to round up as many as possible. So if you would like an autographed copy, please let me know at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. Otherwise, we'll be back throughout the day on Saturday with instant analysis, and then we'll be back after Ohio State and Tennessee to wrap up the entire day of college football right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you on Saturday.